Hello, everybody. It is 10:04 p.m. Central Time on Wednesday, December 21st, 2016. Sorry for the slight delay. Just walking back in the door really quick. I had to make a quick errand, and now back here at the house. Boy, it's getting cold outside again. I don't normally wear hats on the stream here, but I've got a hat on now just to keep my ears warm. It's not nearly as cold as it was the other night, but still biting outside. Hope you guys are doing good. Welcome into the Earthquake 3D live stream to everybody here who's a repeat viewer and everybody who's new. This is a place where we daily recap seismic events, issue semi-daily and weekly earthquake forecasts for new activity to strike. We try to get warnings out in a timely manner into areas that we consider to be hot spots or locations where there's going to be larger activity than normal. So we do that on a weekly basis, and we do have very good success. Guys, for those of you who've been paying attention over the last couple days, we've seen pretty much every location we've talked about over the last few days be hit, minus one location, west coast of the United States. So every other location we talked about received pretty much the expected activity so far, except for west coast of the United States. We still have a couple days, or a day and a half left to go in Japan, and one more day left to go down in South America. So if you don't know what's been going on over the past few days, let me just quickly bring you up to speed. So going back to this last week, we had the two largest earthquakes of the year, measuring in at near 8.0, 7.9 over here in the West Pacific from the Solomon Islands into Papua New Guinea. That was followed by a series of other earthquakes spreading out from the large earthquakes, which is pretty obvious. You can see the whole West Pacific is littered with mid-range fives, upper fives, going into mid-range to upper sixes surrounding the 8.0 activity. Same time that was going on, 4 days ago, 3.5 days ago, a very deep 6.4 earthquake struck over here in the East Pacific. And our deep earthquakes indicate that there could be shallower, larger movement to come in a nearby area. Well, over the past few days, northern part of South America was struck by multiple noteworthy earthquakes going up to mid-range 5, 2 fatalities, large swarm of earthquakes, but you're going to notice that they all fell off the map. USGS choosing not to report any of them for the week, guys, over 5.0. So we know there was a noteworthy swarm there. We know 2 people died there, but there's only 4 earthquakes showing on the map, even though way more than that struck. So the spot to the north was struck, but not by a large earthquake yet. Now there is a potential for a 7.4 to 8.4 off this deep 6.4 that you see here. Deep earthquakes usually cause shallower, larger movement. And there is shallower movement, and I would dare say with the swarm the way it was before they censored it, that swarm that you all saw yesterday and is not there today, that swarm adds up to the total of at least a mid-range 6, with the multiple mid-range 5s and the 2 fatalities. But the potential for a large earthquake still resides in South America for another 24 hours. If we get to tomorrow night and there's no earthquake there, I will be issuing a canceling of the warning. But don't want to get ahead of myself. Every time I do, it seems the earthquakes that we're looking for seem to strike right after. I mean, if I cancel a warning, I take that serious because I want the people there to be prepared. Speaking of being prepared, last night we talked about this. 2 more deep earthquakes struck over here in the West Pacific. Additionally to that, New Zealand was hit by some deep earthquake activity itself. So, multiple deep earthquakes striking in the past day and a half over here from New Zealand up to Fiji. This indicates, and I told everybody last night, apply the rule. If you see a deep earthquake, especially if it's above 4.0, if you see a deep earthquake above 4.0 that is striking, you have to look in the nearby areas to the north and to the south, or to the east and to the west along the plate boundaries for similar sized large movement to occur on both sides. So if there's a deep earthquake down in New Zealand, you would need to look to North New Zealand and South New Zealand for similar size movement to strike, and it should be larger and shallower than the deep earthquake. So let's say it's a deep 4. There should be a shallow 5 to 6 striking your silent zone to the north and to the south within a few days' time. And it's not a 50-50 flip on that. It's the north and the south will move with larger movement when there's a deep earthquake down below. It doesn't show on the map here, and we can go look at the New Zealand feed. Doesn't matter. It doesn't show there either. Now, it's on their website. It shows there. But on Earthquake 3D, I can't pull it up for you to see. So you just have to go over to their website and just take my word for it that it's there from yesterday. So, that being said, we're watching in New Zealand for 1 to 2 magnitudes larger than the deep earthquakes that are striking to the north. Since we don't have the ones to base it on Earthquake 3D, I'll base it on the earthquakes to the north. We have a deep 4.9, deep 4.5. Well, that means the potential at least to 5.9 is there, and it could go up to 6.9. 5.9 to 6.9, but where? In our silent zones between the spots that have already moved. So we have a 4.5 here, you can see to the north, and we have our 4.2 down to the south. In between is the North Island, catcher's mitt position. Pretty obvious, right? Just one example. So when you're down in New Zealand and you see new earthquakes that strike, if they are deep, that indicates there's going to be shallower, larger movement nearby. And you don't need me to even tell you that anymore. You can now forecast based upon that and look to the spots where there is no movement, and that's the spot to next be hit. And it's usually on both sides, whether it's north and south or east and west. Sometimes there's 4 spots that are around the area. If it's at a junction point, like over here in the Indonesia, western Papua New Guinea area, all 4 sides will be hit. Like water flowing down a river, a flood flowing down a river, when it hits a branch in the road or a quadruple branch in the road, it's going to take all 4 branches. And the pressure will the water will distribute itself out across that area. Pressure acting almost like liquid. Speaking of which, there's a new discovery about the liquid core of the Earth, but we won't go there tonight. Just be aware, I have read that article, and when I'm reading it, I'm laughing because they're talking about liquid core of the Earth, and then they're talking about a solid core below the liquid core. They don't know what they're talking about. Okay, so as we look at the earthquakes that struck today in the West Pacific, look what happened. Now, we mentioned Guam yesterday, right? Okay, well, here's Guam right in here. Here's our island chain, the Mariana Islands, and Guam is at the tip. Look what struck right at our 2 arrows, just to the north. 6.0. Look what struck to the west. 5.0. Now, they downgraded the 5.0 to 4.8. They downgraded the 6.0 to 5.9. So they're within 1 magnitude of each other on both sides. Does that sound familiar? Because I talked about this last night. Here, let me go ahead and show you. See the 6.0 over here on the right-hand side, the 6.1? Last night I told you an equal size earthquake struck on the other side, 5.5, but it went up to 5.9. Well, now we have a 5.9 up here to the north, and we have a 5 over to the west. Similar size movement again, within a magnitude of each other. It's all pointing towards Japan right now. Let me get the earthquakes, the last 48 hours for earthquakes on here. Take a look. Earthquakes creeping up from our large movement down to the south, spreading to the west, causing a 6.7, going to the north along our arrows, striking at the midway points all the way up, and stopping just short of Japan itself. So what does this mean? It means where our arrows come into Japan, going up to the north, right here along the coast of Honshu, down to just north of Tokyo itself. Small little stretch here in Japan. Has to be on watch for the next, well, I already put 3-day watch on it, and this is day 2. So by tomorrow, it should be hit. It's creeping up that way. We told everybody to be on watch for it. Could go up to 6.0. You got a bunch of 6s down to the south, and I mean a bunch. Over the past several days, take a look at the 6.0 and greater. And the 5.9 was downgraded, so that was a 6 too. So 6s are obviously spreading up towards Japan, which means Japan needs to be warned. Okay? Oh boy. As we go to the west, we need to be on watch. Now, we talked about Europe. We talked about the potential for large activity to be coming into South Europe yesterday. South Europe was hit. Today, following that, look what died out in Turkey. Now, there are a bunch of smaller ones that struck, but when you actually look at the 2.0 and greater, let me turn on the European feed. Let's actually turn on the Mediterranean region last 50 earthquakes. Excuse me. So, last 50 earthquakes in the Mediterranean. That's basically like the last day and a half. Take a look at it. Swarm of 2s and 3s yesterday following the 5 that hit. Today, Italy hit, but it went up and beyond Italy, up into France and Switzerland. So you can see Italy is now bordered on all sides by earthquake activity, and back in central Italy itself, a swarm topping out at 3. Well, that's pretty much what's been going on for the last several days. There hasn't been a dramatic increase yet. So when we look at the number of earthquakes, it's pretty much the same as it was yesterday. The only difference between yesterday and today is the spot to the north moved along the plate boundary with the 3.0 you see highlighted in green, the 2.5 over here in South France, and down here in Sicily, a new swarm breaking out around the volcanoes. So the 5 that struck in Greece by tomorrow, and I mean probably during the day, tomorrow is for me. It's already tomorrow over in Italy. So it's going to most likely strike during the day today at some point. You are going to be hit by that 5.0 range earthquake. The reason you're going to be hit by a 5.0 earthquake, most likely today, if it doesn't strike by tonight, I will be back on and address what's going on. But it's already been a day. There was a 5 down to your east-southeast, a 5.4. Let me get that blown up here. Okay, you can see the 5.4. You see which way our arrows point. There's already excitement going on. You're going back up in the magnitudes at this point into the 3s. 3s spreading out across the region, plate boundary in flux, and you're right in the middle, Norcia. So, Norcia in Italy is our action spot that's still moving. It's still moving from the big one that hit. The big one that hit like a month and a half, almost 2 months ago at this point. And so the big one that crashed into Italy has never stopped moving. There's been a new round of pressure coming in over and over again that has kept it excited. And every time a new round of pressure comes in, it expends itself almost instantly within a day to 2 days up in Italy. Kind of like what's going down in New Zealand. So down in New Zealand, same thing. Pressure comes in, it expends itself within a couple days, goes up into that 5.0 range, could go larger because of the deep earthquakes over here. But the same thing happens over in Italy. This will flare back up. It's due to flare back up due to the 5 that hit yesterday. Put a 48-hour to 72-hour watch on it. Tomorrow will be the end of it. Okay? So keep watch. We only have a little bit more time to go. And every time this has happened, every single time we've seen Greece and Turkey be hit, it's rolled up into Italy and renewed that swarm. So be prepared for it, okay? Now, South America, Central America, over in Asia, again, we're just trying to recap what's going on right now. We'll get into the forecast just in a second, but on the west coast of the U.S., this is really interesting. Southern California swarmed out and went up to the mid-range 3 around Salton Sea. It followed up into Los Angeles itself and struck very close to a pumping operation. And when I say close, let's just go ahead and pull up these coordinates here, and you guys can just see for yourself. I think it's a picture speaks 1,000 words, always, so it's better for me just to show it to you and you guys to judge for yourself. So the way you do this, when you see an earthquake that stands out, like in downtown Los Angeles, pull up the earthquake, put it in on Google Earth, and search it out. And you may, when you do the coordinates, you may have to remove out the semicolons and other strange stuff that comes in from the Europeans or the USGS, but it'll take you to the earthquake location. Zooming in, zooming in, zooming in. Okay, so see where I've got previous place marks here from other earthquakes that have struck in the area. But see this? Brea? Okay, well this is very close to the well-known pumping operations, and these are large oil pumping operations that are nestled into the hillsides here. Let me see if I can zoom this in and get a good shot on the shadow on the oil well. Yeah, you should be able to see that. If you can't see it, look full screen. You may need to press full screen on here to see that, but This is part of a large oil patch that's set up here in the mountains. And it's not just oil, it's also natural gas. So don't get me wrong, it is a dual operation of both oil and natural gas. Here's another example right here. You can see the shadow on the ground of the two wells side by side. Okay, so pressure coming in, hitting at the oil pumping operations. And that's interesting to me because we see this happen every time before we see movement off the coast. Your pumping operations, your fault zones, your dormant volcanoes all go into flux. And that's again something that's happened over the past couple days, letting us know that the pressure is off the coast. Same time that's going on, check out the renewed swarm back in Oklahoma and Kansas. Finally, okay, it's all a bunch of threes. Look at this. They're now keeping it below 3.0. Isn't that funny? Because the 3.0 well triggering rule is now showing a whole boatload of 2.9s. Yeah, because 2.9 is the magic number of the day, right? You got to understand, Oklahoma first set rules that if there were 4.0 or greater earthquakes, the wells within 6 miles would be either inspected or shut down or pressure drawn down at those wells. They then adjusted the rules to be anything over 3.0 within a quarter mile of another earthquake. Well, now look, magically, 2.9s start appearing on the map to keep it under 3.0. This should be troubling to any researcher or scientist who's into data and facts as opposed to politics at payoff and graft. But I think it's pretty obvious now. They first tried to do the downgrade thing, didn't work. 4.0s started striking. They had to close wells. That was cutting into the money. So they lowered the standard to 3.0. Now it's 3.0s hitting within a quarter mile of each other, and they're downgrading it to 2.9 so they don't have to trigger the well warning. Man, oh man, I get a little bent out of shape when I start thinking about what that means in science for people who are into science. So, this imagery dates from 2014. There may or may not be anything here. It looks like I don't have any place marks here. That doesn't mean anything. We would just have to zoom in and see if there's any pumping operations nearby, and that takes hours of inspection, if not longer. What do we got going on here? Something's placed out in these fields. Interesting. Okay, I don't know what I'm looking at here. I don't like to do this on the live stream. I like to hunt wells when I've got plenty of time and, you know, again, don't have a captive audience that has to sit here and watch me move my mouse around to try and find the different wells. This is from 2014. They've opened up fracking all across southern Kansas in the past 2 years, so it wouldn't shock me to find out that there's a large operation there, because back in 2014, the operations were already creeping up to the north. Again, in 2014, 2015, just to show you an example of what they'll do, they'll come right along the road and build these new wells, and these are brand new. You can see they're still brand new white. The gravel's laid out around them with no growth. So these are built within the last year for sure, and there's no doubt a huge oil patch here that's being developed. So, swarm striking there. This is Kansas. This is the 2.9 in Kansas. But I think at this point, we should probably maybe look up a few of the others. Since they're all 2.9s, do you guys really believe that? I don't believe in all 2.9s everywhere. I believe that they're above 2.9 and that we have a case of keeping them below 2.9 so it doesn't trigger the statewide warning. Okay, so just take a look at the screen here. Let me get the chat box off the way here. Okay, this one's striking right next to a well. Perfect example right here. Right on the flanks of a well in Oklahoma. See this here? Okay, we've got the rusty tanks. We've got the oil well, oil pump. It's part of a greater operation. Eat this pad, and the other one's down to the south, this one and this one. Pretty obvious, right? And you might say, you might not be able to see that, so let me zoom in real close. Okay, so see all that. Another 2.9. So why are all these threes, or I'd say greater than threes, striking? Well, look at the size of the operation here. Okay, every one of those little white pads is a different frac well or oil and gas well. Pressure's coming across the edge of the craton. Finally, it's causing a swarm of at least above 3s that they're trying their best to keep below 3. Same time that's happening, 3s are striking in Southern California, 2s going up to the north, and then a rare 3 up in Montana, which technically is on the flanks of Yellowstone supervolcano's magma chamber. Goes all the way up into Montana, west through Idaho. It's 11 Grand Canyons or greater in size. Down in the crust, below the crust, going into the asthenosphere. So, 3.0s are the number of the day, right? All the way across the entire plate. From Oklahoma, west to Southern California, north to Montana. And then a series of other 2s striking the Olympic Peninsula, which I talked about last night, ironically, and striking down to the south, and a 3.0 reported, mid-range 3, reported off the coast of Vancouver, BC last night. So all those 3s indicate there is some serious pressure off the coast right now, pushing 3.0-wise all the way over to Oklahoma and all the way north as into Washington and Vancouver, BC. Letting us know Vancouver, BC is under stress, and so is the coast of Northwest California. So here we are. I'm still watching. We're watching for the potential to go to 6.0 here at Eureka and 5.9 to the north at Vancouver, BC. And I'm not lifting the warning yet. We're going to keep it for another day. Now, there's a reason I'm not lifting the warning. Up here to the north, Alaska. Did you guys hear about the new eruption that happened at Alaska? Here, check this out. What was the name of this place? I'd never heard of it before yesterday. Bogoslav volcano in the Aleutian Islands, just west of Alaska. Well, guys, huge blast. 25, 30,000 foot high. Enough that it was reported on satellite imagery, and nobody knew about it until it was reported from a pilot. So, big, huge blast here. Same time that's going on, we have some blasts happening over here at Shivulek volcano. Now, I don't forecast volcanic eruptions, guys. Just understand that Shivulek sent off a huge blast. Also, another blast over at Papua New Guinea and western Indonesia at Sinabung. Oh, and Halmahera in Indonesia as well. So, the West Pacific's blowing, the North Pacific's blowing. When we go over to the East Pacific, you have Colima, Guatemala, Costa Rica, Peru, and Argentina all erupting. This is all today, guys. Let me read the list again. Shivulek, Langila, Sinabung, Dukono, Bogoslav, Colima, Fuego, Turrialba, Sabancaya, Copihu. Now, several of these are regular suspects, but all of them have new volcanic ash advisories, enough to the point where they have to warn aircraft. Here, 10 kilometer altitude. Dissipated to the south. That was the second blast of the day. So I would dare say the East, North, and West Pacific are now blowing with volcanic eruptions, which means that the west coast of the United States is due for an earthquake. If the areas down to the south are blowing, the areas up to the north are blowing, the areas over to the west are blowing, and accompanied by large earthquakes, then you are due for an earthquake, not for a blast. Just so you know, off the coast. When it strikes off the coast, it'll push over to the east again. The good news here, if you're in Oklahoma, it seems the pressure is taking a trickle-down effect or a seep-over effect, and it's taking a week and a half for pressure to go from California over to Oklahoma. When it's hitting Oklahoma, they're keeping it all below 3s. Now, I guarantee it that these are greater than 3. Guaranteed. 100%. They're doing this to downgrade the earthquake below the trigger warning level. I'm sure if I were to take the time and go look up the origin information on each one of these, I might indeed find station details that contradict what they're showing. Look, hey, look at the screen. Can you guys see the screen? Look at magnitudes. Look at the top one detected. Now, they're going to factor in these low balls and bring it down. But look what's detected. 3.4, 2.5 low ball, 3.8, 3.7, and then down to the 2s. 3.8. Look at all the 3.8s detected. 3.8, 3.7, 3.8, 3.3, 3.6, and they go with 2.9. They bring in those ultra low readings to bring it down. You should throw out those ultra lows and the ultra highs, and then you'd be above 3. And guess what? They're within a certain distance from each other. You'd have to trigger the warnings for the state. And then they'd be drawing down well pressure and shutting down more wells. So, anyways, we are looking for the earthquake to strike off the coast. When it does, it will push to the east again and renew our swarm. And I guess we're going to see a whole bunch more 2.9s, aren't we going to? I mean, that's just troubling. As we go to the south, I mentioned the volcanoes erupting, Colima and Fuego. Colima in Mexico, Fuego in Guatemala. Guatemala flanked on both sides by earthquakes. That shouldn't be a shock. Down to the south, Ecuador. Your swarm finally starting to stop. But it added up, I dare say, to at least a 6.5, which means Eastern Caribbean over here near Venezuela, Barbados, south of Dominica, southeast of Puerto Rico, should be seeing at least a 6.0 earthquake striking near our small red arrow in the Eastern Caribbean. Yes, Caribbean should be struck by a 6, and we should put it at 48 hours at this point, maybe even less. So keep watch, Eastern Caribbean. Why? Because of the swarms over to the west that push to the east. And if you take into account the volcanic eruptions, again, Turrialba, Fuego, Colima, back to back to back, several days in a row. Each one of those adds up to a 5.0 as well, which equals about 5 or 6 different 5s on top of the other 5s. And so if you have 5 or 6 5s on top of 5 or 6 other 5s, that adds up to about a 6.1, 6 to 6.1. Okay? So that's going to push to the east. Down to the south, same thing's going to happen. The pressure is going to push down to the east-southeast. It's already happening. Look where our southernmost earthquake occurred. 4.4, not that big, but it's just a result of the pressure transferring down, and it will go down here to our X marks the spot, ultimately, if it can make it that far. Now we're looking for that potential of a large earthquake to strike next to our deep earthquake here. So the areas that we talked about last night still stand. If you don't know the areas that were named, let me quickly rename them for you here again. Our deep earthquake struck down in Peru, right at the Peru-Brazil border, and the interior arrows let us know which way the pressure is transferring mostly, up to the north, which means we do have to watch up to the north, where it's already been struck, but we have to keep watch for another day to the north of this deep earthquake in our silent zone, North Peru, South Ecuador. It's the only spot that hasn't been hit. So I'm hoping, and I don't like to do hope in science, but I'm hoping that this swarm here with the 2 fatalities and the multiple 5s is it. And that's all she wrote with it, and the pressure will transfer over to the east, cause a single 6 over in the Eastern Caribbean, and then be done with it. But one day more will tell. It'll tell the tale on what's going down. As we go around the rest of the planet, you know, Japan, we are watching you. As we go west of Japan, we have a huge silent zone. Now, right in the middle of the silent zone, ironically, it's not ironic actually, the reason this struck, the volcanic blasts that keep happening here at Cinnabon keep happening is because it's the middle fulcrum point between our 2 zones that keep moving. Fulcrum point between our large stack of earthquakes over here. You go across Indonesia, follow the fault zones as they go to the west, and our central point comes down to western Sumatra. Now, we issued a warning 4 days ago, or 3 days ago, for here in Sumatra, Indonesia, which is right next to Krakatoa volcano, and it's going on expiration time now, and maybe in about an hour from now, the warning should expire. The warning was for a potential of a 6 to be striking here. Now, you'll notice all the activity going up towards Japan. Maybe I'm jumping the gun. Maybe it'll strike by tomorrow, and tomorrow night I'll be on here saying, God dang it, the earthquake hit, and I canceled the warning. But I said 72 hours, and we're 70 hours right now, basically. So, 2 more hours, an hour, it should expire. I was looking for a 6 to strike here. So much to the north and to the east, but nothing to the west yet. It's been blocked by the 6.7. 6.7 sent direction to the north. Pretty obvious. But it's not going to stop there. Cinnabung's erupting, letting us know pressure is coming to the west. I'm just, again, going to have to cancel the warning because I put a 72-hour on it. As we go further to the west from there, we have to go from Cinnabung up here to the 4.3. Now, between the 4.3 and Cinnabung, we have a new halfway point at Myanmar. Cinnabung equals a 5.0 earthquake because it erupted. An eruption equals roughly a 5.0. And if you take the 5.0 plus this 4.3 that you see on the center of the map here, add those two together, that takes you to a 5.043. In other words, it's going to basically keep us at a 5 to 5.1 is due to strike in the middle point between Mount Cinnabung and the 4.3. Middle point goes back into Myanmar. Hasn't been struck in a little while. Going west into Europe, you know what to watch for as well. We are watching for Italy to be struck. We also have to watch for the Mideast. When the Mideast gets struck, that's when we're going to see new pressure go back into South Europe. So that sums it up. If you live on one of these red arrows, here, excuse me really quick. I'm still recovering, guys. This cold weather is just taking it out of me. So, if you live on these red arrows, please have a plan and be prepared. You got to have a plan and be prepared for earthquake activity if you live along these zones. You already heard it, but at this point, I want you to take a look at the earthquakes that have struck over the last 7 days. So you see this? This is noteworthy. We had the two largest earthquakes of the year in the past 9 to 10 days. We had a swarm of deep earthquakes that just happened in the last day and a half, and we have a very deep earthquake over here in the East Pacific that's rather rare. If you add just those together, that alone says be prepared for a large earthquake. Additionally, we have the very, very strange, anomalous waveform activity showing up on the Mimic TPW, which I am not discounting as an error or anything. Look, anytime somebody tells me something's an error, and I've seen systems that show activity before, and they try to tell me it's an error, and it turns out it's a solar flare, or it's something that's legit, that's why I question the official story on everything. Because I've been lied to directly by people in positions of authority. We've caught them. So if you catch somebody, or you catch a institution, or if you catch a group of scientists faking something or lying about something, it'll make you question everything from then on. But you almost have to be the one to catch it for you to understand what I'm talking about here. So I'm not going to discount it. Even though they came out and said it was just an error, this is no offense to anybody who does want to discount it. I'm not going to jump the gun. I want to wait for a week and see what the results are. I want to see if there is anything that happens. And if we do get a very, very large earthquake, way bigger than what I'm looking for here, then we'll know that the wave was real of some kind, that there was some real disturbance that happened. But the only way to find out is to wait and see if there's a result or an action that comes from it, not just to immediately dismiss it as a sensor malfunction. Okay? So, that being said, you need to have a plan because sometimes I'm wrong. Okay? Other times, there's anomalous events that happen from the sun all the way to man-made events. So you need to know what to do when an earthquake strikes. You know, you don't have to buy a lot of stuff to survive an earthquake event. Most of the time, the people who are injured and killed as they're running out of a structure and they're hit by something. Did you know it's actually, you're less of a target if you stay in one spot than if you spread yourself out across 20, 50 feet, running through a falling, running through debris that's falling? If you have things falling from up above, it's better to stay put. Find a place to take shelter, wait for the things to stop falling, then get out before any kind of potential collapse could happen in your building, if there's a large enough earthquake. A lot of times it's just 4s and 5s. And once you get up to the mid-range 5 into 6, that's where actually we just had 2 fatalities down in Ecuador. So it's a fine line between those 5s that just will knock things off your shelf, the upper 5s going into 6 that are enough to actually hurt people and cause structure collapses in stone buildings. You need to look at the building type you're in too. I don't know where you live, guys. You may live in a mobile home. You may live in an apartment complex on the 20th floor. I don't know. But you want to look at your building and know how it's built. And stone structures, concrete structures, unless they have steel reinforcement in them, tend to fracture very easily under stresses. Okay, I mean, nobody's shocked by this. Concrete and stone break easily when stress is introduced. Well, seismic stress in a stone building can lead to collapse. And that's what's happened in all of these areas, whether it's over in Italy, down in New Zealand, up in Japan, or even if it's in the United States. As we've seen with highway overpasses, even the steel reinforced with steel beam inside can collapse because, again, we're talking about lateral and rise and fall forces. So not just up and down, but side to side motion that all hits at once. Up and down and side to side sometimes. And as that happens, you can understand stone and concrete crack, crumble, and fall. So you need to know about your building and know what to do. Don't be scared. This can take all the mystery out of it. Don't be scared, be prepared. Being prepared means looking around you and knowing what's going on. Most of you are pretty familiar with the weather, right? You watch where the storms blow from and where they blow to, and you can see a big storm coming to you off the coast. Okay, well, you can see a big storm of seismic activity here this week in the West Pacific. And it comes your way, following the arrows. Ironically, the same way the weather goes, at least to the north. And it follows the arrows over to the east. So if you live along the arrows and you see big activity over upstream from you or upwind from you, another way to put it for weather, if you see a big pressure system upwind from you, you know it's coming your way in to prepare for a storm. Same thing goes for seismic pressure. Okay? And best I can do is tell you the spots to watch and the magnitudes to watch for. It then falls on you guys to get the warnings out to the people in the areas. I'm putting it out publicly on YouTube for the hopes that the whole world will get the warnings. Just this week, while we were doing an update, this is amazing, it's over on my channel. While I was doing my update, I issued a warning for a 6.7 earthquake to strike. Said I needed to watch, going to be striking in the next 24 to 48 hours. And about 30 minutes later, as I was still doing my update, we heard ding, and I went back over, and right in the spot where we warned, the 6.7 hit. And now we find out there's some injuries associated with that. So, they had a 30-minute warning, which is way better than any professional could ever do. They're trying to give a few second warnings in Japan and on the west coast of the United States. They want to give a 2-second warning to big companies with servers and electrical companies that they can tell them 2 seconds ahead of time when an earthquake's going to strike. Well, here we are with 30 minutes. And it was just amazing to have it happen on the live stream because you guys got to see it happen real time. We didn't have to wait for me to come back and make a video and tell you at some future point, hey, look, the earthquake I named got hit. No, this one happened real time on the stream, and you can watch it. It's over on my channel. So it's important to get the warnings. It's important to get them out in a timely manner. Don't be alarmist. Let them know that it's, we're basing this on the 8s that were down to the south. We're looking for 6s to spread out. Why are we looking for 6s to spread out? Because that's the other earthquakes that spread out were 6s. Loss of momentum out from the big earthquake, it's kind of losing pressure as it goes further away from the big earthquake. Does that make sense? So Japan's online for a 6 because of the 6.1 just to the south of Japan, the 6.7 further to the south, the 7.9 and 6.7 to the east that set it all into motion to begin with, and the deep earthquakes that ultimately caused this whole mess to begin with. So word up to my people. Everybody in chat, I appreciate you being part of this. I appreciate you being here and for getting the warnings to the people around the planet. You guys are the only difference between me making it or failing on YouTube. I would ask if you do like my work that you consider possibly sharing it to your friends, family, coworkers, loved ones, anybody who you think would need the warning. And if you really like my work, please consider subscribing to my channel so I can grow it up. It's gone way, way beyond where I thought it was going to be. I was asking to be at 170,000 by Christmas. And then these big earthquakes hit. We named the warnings for the certain areas. They got hit spot on, and it's gone astronomically through the roof since then this week. So thank you to all the new subscribers, guys. I'm here every day. I try to be here punctual and timely every night. And if I am going to be late, I'll let you know. Sorry I'm such a little screen down here. You know what? I can make this bigger here. If you're new here, oh wait. Well, oh well. All right, you can't see me. I'm gonna need to figure out what's going on with my camera. We'll do that after Christmas. All right, so I'll be back. I'll be watching for other activity to take place. Of course, if we see anything big go down, you can bet I'll be right on at a moment's notice to cover it. One more time, have a plan. Really, you don't have to buy a lot of stuff. Just look around your house and know what you'll do when it hits. That's my number one goal for all you guys to do. If you got kids, make sure they know what to do so they're not freaking out either. All right? Peace out. Much love.